Hi, my name is Rachel, and today I will be presenting on the Matisse study, a randomized trial of group art therapy for people with schizophrenia. Before I get started with the presentation, I do want to point out that I did this article on a study that hasn't quite been completed yet. The researchers report that although they have done the trials for this study, they have not finished collecting data. So I'll start with some background information about schizophrenia and art therapy. First, schizophrenia is a severe mental disorder that affects about 1 in 100 people. It does include symptoms such as hallucinations and delusions. It is usually treated with medication, and it also includes treatment that is combined with medication and psychological and social interventions. Art therapy is a practice that has been going on for about 60 or more years. It facilitates expression for people who can't quite express themselves verbally. Basically, a lot of art materials are used to encourage that expression where people can create what they need to express themselves. So moving on to the research problem, one of the reasons that the researchers decided to proceed with this study was because little research has explored the effects of art therapy with schizophrenia. With previous research studies, they haven't quite gotten a lot of information due to small samples, short follow-up periods, high rates of loss to follow-up, including withdrawals from the program, and no attention to control groups. So that is what this study will be focusing on today. For this study, the researchers wanted to specifically examine the impact of referral to group art therapy. That would be the first condition. The second condition would be standard care with an attention control treatment, which would be the activity group, and standard care alone. These researchers had 4 hypotheses. The first one was starting with art therapy would improve global functioning at a 24-month follow-up. The second hypothesis was that the referral art therapy group would be more cost-effective. The third hypothesis was that the referral group for art therapy would have improved mental health, social functioning, and well-being and satisfaction with care. And the fourth hypothesis would be that the art therapy group would have higher attendance rates compared to the activity group. The setting and sample for this study was actually in the UK. They were recruited from community mental health clinics in West London, North London, and Avon and Wiltshire, and there was also one in Northern Ireland. The populations for this study were from inner cities, urban, semi-rural, and rural places, and they were all from diverse ethnicities. The inclusion criteria was that participants had to be over 18 years of age to participate, and they had to have a diagnosis of schizophrenia confirmed by an examination of case notes using operationalized criteria. There were a total of 376 participants, and 94 were taken from each center. So as I mentioned before, there were 3 conditions for the participants in this study. For the art therapy groups, the participants were given 90-minute sessions each week for 12 months. In each group, there were no more than 8 members. However, if a member did not attend to the session, there would be an alternate member available to attend. The groups were conducted by registered art therapists who had the necessary training, and they had co-facilitators who were usually another staff member or a volunteer. The process of making art included a tripartite relationship which meant that it involved the therapist, the participant, and the image or art project. The groups aim to give people the potential to explore and utilize experience of other relationships between group members. And the interventions were flexible for each participant. For the activity groups, the time frame was the same. The activities were meant to reflect typical activity-based groups in the community mental health. There was the condition that this group could not have any arts or crafts involved in their group process, and the engagement for the group, which meant was the recruitment, included phone and postal contact. The standard care condition did not have a group. Treatment fidelity was measured by the co-facilitators of the group. The facilitators would have to fill out what were called pro forma forms. This included notes about the structure and content of their sessions. However, these forms were filled out by both the art therapy group condition and the activity group condition. For these forms, a random sample of 200 forms was taken from the 376 participants. Participation and other data were measured at baseline, 1 year and 2 year follow-ups, and researchers, participants, and key workers contributed to these measures. The researchers took data about global functioning using the Global Assessment Functioning Scale. They also took information about mental health. They took information about medication using the Morsky scale, a 4-item questionnaire, and they took information about health-related quality of life. They also took the cost data from an adult service use inventory. The participants would fill out forms about social functioning, well-being, and satisfaction with services. And the key workers would also provide information about their engagement in study, occupational and housing information, suicidal behavior, violence, and aggressive behaviors, and their global functioning. The procedures of the study started with researchers reaching out to the different centers. They would actually send out a lot of information to these centers and then would ask them to have their clients give them verbal consent. The verbal consent would then give the researchers permission to contact the clients, in which they would discuss the conditions of the study and have them write out a formal written consent. Rater masking was maintained by providing specific instructions to participants and their clinical teams not to disclose treatment details. Participants were offered £15 honorarium in recognition of their time in completing research interviews and any inconvenience related to their involvement in the study. The researchers collected data and analyzed it using the statistical package STATA for all analyses. For the main analysis, they imputed baseline missing covariates. For the continuous outcomes, they used analysis of covariance. The sensitivity analyses would be conducted using multiple imputation, which assumes data are missing at random. The researchers anticipating clustering outcomes as a result of patients being assigned to groups facilitated by different therapists in different sites. So to address this, they would explore separately the therapist and the site as random effects. They also would do a secondary analysis, which will examine the impact level of uptake of groups using complier average causal effect analysis. And they would also analyze the health economic evaluation, which would be conducted from a societal perspective and would cover the services received and productivity. At the discussion of this study, the researchers explained that they wanted to do this because it would be the first opportunity to examine the effects and cost effectiveness of group art therapy compared to an active control treatment for schizophrenia. It would also allow them to examine the engagement and benefits associated with art therapy versus the other groups. They would also be able to see the long-term effects based on their 24-month follow-up. And they had recently noticed new information from the National Guidance in England, which recommended art treatment for all schizophrenia patients. So they wanted to see how effective that would be. They also wanted to test the impact for wider groups of patients in clinical settings. Because there weren't any results for me to discuss, this does conclude my presentation, but I do want to thank you for listening.